Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 50th part of What If Deku Had Psychokinesis. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 50, Going Full Ridley Scott's Predator on Some S'mores. The next day, Izuku and Ochako walked into their class and found Kyuka and Tsuyu standing around Momo's desk, happily chatting away. So she's able to go, then? Cool. Tsuyu crossed her arms and grumbled, shouldn't have picked rock, Karo. Kyuka gave her a friendly pat on the shoulder. We'll bring you back a souvenir. You know for sure she's gonna pick out something that's leopard printed, Kyuka said with a smile, with the other girls laughing. Kyuka then nervously pinched her ear jacks and tapped them together. Though are you sure it's okay for me to wear that? I don't mind picking something more, feminine. Momo waved off her concerns. Oh, it's not going to be a problem at all. Dior will have exactly what you want ready in no time. Kyuka sighed. Oh, good. So what about you? Momo smiled, a graceful elegant look that only helped her refined image. Now that would spoil the surprise. Tsuyu tapped her chin. It's gonna be something really mature, I bet. Kyuka shuddered as she swallowed a lump in her throat while Momo chuckled. Deciding it might be best to change the subject before her imagination started to run wild, Kyuka noticed that there were new people in the room. Oh, Midoriya, Uraraka, you guys are the last ones who signed up, huh? Izuku nodded. I guess so. I'm actually shocked Ida isn't here. Ochako snickered. Oh, for a fact he's gonna be peeved he didn't grab a spot in time. For shame, for shame. How could one as class representative fail to apply for the prestigious honor of getting the first elective summer class? Izuku mockingly lamented before he and Ochako started laughing. Momo had a hand over her mouth to stifle a laugh of her own. It wouldn't be proper for the vice class representative to be seen laughing at the expense of the class representative. The amused side-eye from Kyuka made it pretty clear she wasn't succeeding. Ahem, Momo cleared her throat. I think we should all take our seats. The bell will soon ring and we all know that Aizawa-sensei doesn't like to waste time. With a few seconds to go, everyone was in their chairs, ready for Aizawa to come in and get the class going. The clock struck the top of the hour and 5 heads all turned towards the door, waiting for their teacher to walk in. As if on cue, the door to the class slid open. Good morning, Aiz. Their welcome was cut off quickly. It was not Aizawa that strolled in. Himiko smiled brightly as she walked into the room and made her way to the podium. Gone were her usual messy sidebuns, replaced with a single ponytail. Even her wild bangs were stylized. Instead of her eye patch, she wore a pair of oval glasses perched on her nose. The simple changes gave her face a measure of maturity it normally never had. She was also dressed smartly with a slim black blazer over a collared crisp white shirt. The wide collar was pulled open, so that everyone could get a good view of her neck. Over her legs, Himiko had on black slacks that hugged her curves just right and ended high on her ankle. With the black flats she was wearing, she was showing off just enough leg to get the attention she wanted. Standing in front of the class, Himiko's smile got wider. Good morning, class. Turning, Himiko walked over to the board behind her and picked up a piece of chalk, bending over just a tad more than she needed to, but in the process making those tight black slacks hug her just a little tighter, and the bottom of the blazer hitch up just a tad. All at once, 3 heads cocked to the side to get a better, respectable, look. Ochako gulped, because with how tight those slacks were and with her bent over like that, it was made so clear that Himiko had a fucking perky butt. A quick glance over and she saw that Izuku was also staring, though fortunately he was holding himself together perhaps a little better than her, else something would be on fire by now. Tsuyu for her part had her hands clenched in her lap, squeezed together by her thighs as she tried really hard to ignore that part of her quirk's instincts. All in all, Himiko had 3 of the 5 in the class all agreeing, she's got a nice butt. Himiko took the chalk and as big and as overly cutesy as she could, wrote her name onto the chalkboard. She turned around just as Izuku, Ochako and Tsuyu got their heads back on straight, missing their momentarily dumbfounded looks. But she caught Kyuka rolling her eyes. Seriously? I get you're probably bored, but you might want to leave before Aizawa-sensei catches you and makes you take this class. Plopping the chalk down, Himiko huffed at the idea. I let the teachers know I had no intention of taking their silly extra classes. Frankly, you guys are all nerds for signing up. Hey! Izuku complained. Oh, don't even try to deny it, Himiko teased. You're the biggest hero nerd in the world. She's got a point, Deku, Ochako said with a chuckle. Oi! Momo raised her hands, calling for calm, before she addressed Himiko. I understand you wish to hang out, Toga. Having to stay at school now that classes are done must seem boring. But we are here for a special elective class. I'm sure there will be time to talk once we're done. Now we must be ready for Aizawa-sensei, or whoever is teaching this class, for that matter. Oh, that's a good point, Yaoyorozu, Deku said. We don't know who's actually teaching the class. Himiko cleared her throat and rapped her knuckles on the board. As I was saying, good morning, class. Nu, Ochako groaned as she leaned forward in utter disbelief. You can't be serious. Her doubt was mirrored by her classmates as they looked at Himiko like she had gone crazy. Well, crazier. More crazy than is the normal amount of crazy they deal with. Himiko adjusted her glasses. You all can call me Toga-sensei. I refuse, Ochako countered immediately, because there's no chance you're our teacher. Toga is your teacher and you will show her all the respect afforded to her position, Aizawa stated plainly as he lazily walked into the room, already feeling the headache the day was going to cause him. And she will be teaching the special elective today. All five heads looked at him wide-eyed, then at Himiko who waved smugly. Izuku started scratching his neck nervously. Sue, is it too late to run? Oh, definitely, Himiko answered. Kyuka's hand shot up. Whose bright idea was it to let Toga teach? Principal Mizu was the one that came up with this idea. No one sitting liked how much that made sense. Though it did put any of their other questions to bed. For the most part. Izuku raised his hand. So Toga-sensei, Himiko vibrated upon hearing that, what exactly is this lesson going to be about? An excellent question, Izuku. Himiko smiled brightly as she walked back up to the podium, and after fiddling with some controls and having Aizawa give her a hand, she got the projector screen lowered and a static image of the outside of a jewelry store. You all are going to be dealing with what the police are calling a hostage situation. Suddenly the class got a little more serious, their attention on the projection. The store itself was large and built into a larger building. On the street were several police stand-ins, dummies dressed in police uniforms. They had a perimeter set up all around the building. Momo frowned. How much information will we be given for this? Not a lot. You only know what the police know. It's a single villain, with an unknown motive and unknown quirk. A rough estimate of 20 to 30 hostages, but soon after the building was taken, contact with the store's security systems were shut down and people were moved away from the windows. The villain has made no demands, or made any attempt to make contact with the officers or negotiators, Himiko explained as she pulled up some more slides. Ochako leaned back in her chair, looking a little overwhelmed. Hold on, this is. What you're saying is we won't know anything? Yup. Everyone shared Ochako's flabbergasted expression. Himiko just shrugged. This is a step into the unknown for you guys. Almost everything going on inside that building is a complete blank. You need to expect the unexpected. Are the hostages unharmed? Izuku asked. At various times a hostage has walked past the windows of the building, making sure that they are seen, and then they walk away, Himiko answered. It's a different hostage each time, however this has only been done 3 times. And the situation has been going on for roughly 3 hours, though the break between each time a hostage has been spotted has been about the same. When you all are at the site, the police will be expecting to see another hostage walk by the windows. And they're just walking? Izuku asked for clarification. A lazy stroll, but they make eye contact with the officers and make sure they have been seen before going back. Himiko watched as her 5 classmates/students exchanged looks. She could see that each of them was thinking pretty hard about this. All right. Go get your costumes. We have a bus waiting to take you to the testing site. The bus ride for the 5 was moderately quiet. Each person was going over the information, or more accurately, the lack of information given. Neither Aizawa or Himiko had ridden with them, but they had been told that like the finals, teachers would be watching and grading their performances. Now that they were on site, at one of the furthest back police checkpoints, they had been given police reports and had also been given a blueprint of the store. More or less, it was exactly as Himiko had explained. So as they studied the layout, the 5 moved in closer towards the store, but taking back alleys at Kyuka's suggestion. Best to try and not let the villain know that heroes were on scene. They reached an alley exit that had a clear view of the store just across the street. And now that they had arrived, they needed a plan. So, anyone here any good with stealth? Kyuka asked as she peeked around the corner and kept an eye on the jewelry store. Because I don't see how we're getting over there without being seen. Izuku shrugged. Unfortunately, that's more Toga's thing. What we need is to figure out what's going on with the hostages, Ochako decided. I could float up along the building roofs and work my way down to one of the windows. Momo shook her head. You'd still be floating across the street. Even if you are above the window's line of sight, you could still get spotted by the store's cameras. Just because the system can't be accessed externally anymore, doesn't mean it isn't still operating for those inside. Suyu tapped her chin. Jiru, can you hear what's going on? Oh, that's right. Momo clasped her hands together. You should be able to figure out where the people are just from their sounds. Kyuka nodded and crouched down, sticking both ear jacks into the road and covering her hands with her ears, trying to block out all the background noise. There are some people in there, I think. This far away, it's kinda tricky. Plus, it doesn't sound like they're making a lot of noise. Most of the hostages might be dummies, Izuku said with a frown. So they won't sound like a group of 30 people. How about the villain? Ochako asked. Maybe they're stomping around? The group waited silently as Kyuka listened, but ultimately she pulled her jacks out and shook her head. Sorry, I can't tell who's who in there. Maybe we should just rush in, Izuku suggested. Though even he didn't sound super convinced at his own idea. That sounds like a good way to get the hostages killed, Deku, Ochako said, shaking her head. We have no idea what this villain can do. Or if they've done anything to the people in there. And the longer we wait means they have more time to do whatever they're doing in there, Izuku countered. Suyu tapped her chin. Midoriya has a point. Momo looked over at her, startled. You think we should just rush in? Suyu shook her head, no, not really. But I was talking about the last thing he said. Whatever they're doing in there? Is that what you mean? Ochako asked. Yeah. Doesn't this seem weird? Toga told us this was a hostage situation, right? Suyu went on. And when her classmates nodded she pointed out, but she specifically said, it was a hostage situation because the police were calling it that. That's, Kyuka tapped her jacks together, thinking about that. But they had to pick this spot for some reason. Want money, go to a bank. Want diamonds, go to a jewelry store. Seems clear-cut to me, Ochako pointed out. But have they even tried to take anything? Remember, they haven't made any demands. No exchange of people for even a method to get the diamonds and stuff out. Just nothing. The 5 were silent. Once again, they were running everything through their heads. Then Izuku's head snapped up as he remembered something. Toga said, expect the unexpected. This is her lesson. She's teaching this class, so nothing about this is going to be what it's supposed to be. You're right, Sue, she said it was the police who thought it was a hostage situation. She never said it herself. And, oh, how that made the stomachs of his friends and classmates drop. Okay. So this is Toga trying to teach us something, and she's a mean teacher. Ochako recalled the last time Himiko had tried to teach her a lesson. It ended with both her pinkies dislocated and her getting machine gun punched in the face. So, let's work this out. This isn't about whatever is inside the jewelry store. So what the villain went in there for, is what? The people. Dread dripped from Momo's voice. It must have been the people. Kyuka held up her hands. Wait, we just said this wasn't a hostage situation. Now we're saying it is? You take hostages because you intend to trade their lives for your safety and other things. A car and guarantee of safety after a robbery. But this villain, if they wanted the people, then they aren't hostages. There, Momo gulped. Bait, Karo. Tsuyu finished. Letting them walk in front of the window, that's them dangling the bait. But why? Kyuka asked. You put bait out, to catch something, or someone. Izuku took a breath. Heroes. In a situation like this, with an unknown quirk in play, of course the police would call for heroes to take over dealing with the situation. The villain is trying to lure us in there. That has to be it. Ochako snuck her hand in under her visor and rubbed her brow. I swear, Toga is just trying to mess with us. This is way too complicated. Ochako pulled her hand away looking serious. Well, if the villain wants us to go in there, then we absolutely can't just go rushing in. Help! The shrill scream cut the kids' discussion off as from one of the windows of the store, a woman started banging on the glass. Her blouse was stained red and she looked panicked and horrified. Help! She's killing us! She's URK. Something flashed across the woman's throat, and the window was splashed with blood. Her body collapsed in a heap while her blood dripped down the window. Izuku's body lit up, first bathed in green as he picked up a nearby trash can and used it to shatter a window, then the glow turned into lightning that danced across his body. Just before he took off, Ochako wrapped her arms around his shoulders and floated herself. As one, they rocketed out of the alley, cleared the no-man's land between them and the store, and rushed inside, leaving their stunned classmates behind. It took some seconds, but Tsuyu snapped out of her shock first. So much for not rushing in, Karo. Momo and Kyuka quickly joined her as they also rushed across the street after Izuku and Ochako. Tsuyu leapt through the hole that Izuku had made and came to an immediate stop, Momo and Kyuka almost crashing into her with an oof. Ajui, we need to keep going. There's no telling where Midoriya and Uraraka could have. Oh, Momo's eyes widened as she saw what Tsuyu was looking at. Kyuka retched and turned away. Lying sprawled out on the floor, was the unfortunate victim that they had seen have her throat slashed open. And Midnight Sensei? Tsuyu walked over, and closely examined the dead teacher. Her throat? Momo peeked down. Momo sighed heavily. I see. While she was lying in a pool of blood, with the front of her civilian clothes stained red, there was no gaping wound in her neck. Both stood by before glancing at each other. We weren't actually worried someone was dead, right? And no. Of course not, Momo confirmed. UA's training methods may be unconventional, but they aren't barbaric. Even though Toga's teaching this class, Karo? I just had a disturbing thought. You don't suppose that the villain is actually AAIEEE. The sudden blood-curdling scream yanked Tsuyu and Momo's attention from their dead teacher and over to Kyuka, who was backing up, hand over her mouth and all color draining from her face. Momo quickly ran to her side, asking her what was wrong, but Kyuka latched onto her, shaking like a leaf. While Momo tried to calm Kyuka down, Tsuyu looked to see what had terrified her classmate so badly. Karo. Her croak got stuck in her throat. Lying on the floor towards the back, face down in a pool of blood and a knife sticking out of his back, was Izuku. The three knew this wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the sight was so disturbing and unfortunately, so familiar that it struck a chord in them. They had all seen Izuku's broken body get taken away after the USJ, so seeing this sure felt real. As Kyuka finally got her heart to stop trying to beat itself out of her chest, Tsuyu walked over to Izuku's body and knelt down. Taking her hair, she brushed the end of it against Izuku's nose. Izuku's face twitched, and he closed his eyes that much tighter as he tried not to sneeze. Tsuyu flashed the group a thumbs up, and while they breathed a sigh of relief, Tsuyu pulled at the knife handle that was sticking out of his back, only to find it was just a handle, clipped to his cape. Okay, Kyuka sighed. Okay, so? Midoriya is dead and… Darn it. I lost sight of her down the hall, Izuku. Did you have any luck down the other hall, way? The group turned to see Ochako come running out of one of the halls, stopping as she caught sight of Izuku on the ground. Oh god, Izu. It's alright, Karo. Tsuyu had her hands up, quickly working to stop the coming panic attack she knew was about to get unleashed. Even staged, seeing Izuku dead was going to be traumatic for Ochako. It's okay. It's not real blood. Ochako closed her eyes and growled out, I'm going to kill Himiko. Momo crossed her arms. So I take it we all agree that Toga is the villain here. The surviving students nodded. Uraraka, what exactly happened? We were only a few seconds behind you two. Ochako glanced down at Izuku and shuddered. When we jumped in, I saw someone running down the hall. So while Izuku went to check on the hostage, I ran after the person. Tsuyu frowned. I can't believe Toga would be fast enough to double back and kill Midoriya before we got in. Are you sure you saw someone? Ochako started pulling at her fingers, face scrunched up. I thought I saw someone. With everything happening so fast, maybe you just saw a shadow? Momo offered. Because unless there are two villains in the area, Toga isn't fast enough to outrun you, double back and kill Midoriya, and then vanish again before we made it inside. Ochako closed her eyes. Oh god, I'm an idiot. Now Izuku's just lying in blood and I can't, damn it. Tsuyu moved over to Ochako's side, trying to comfort her friend. Momo also tried to make her feel better. It's going to be alright. We'll find Toga and get back at her. Plus, it's not like Midoriya is actually hurt or that the blood is real. Kyuka knelt down and got some of it on her fingers, rubbing it. We sure this isn't real blood? The group looked at Izuku's corpse and then Midnight's. Momo nodded certainly. It's not like UA would have access to this much blood or be willing to waste it. There was a pause. Doesn't UA make blood for Toga to drink? Kyuka asked. Another pause, and while the group wasn't looking, both Izuku and Midnight shuddered a little. Security breach. Security breach. Heads snapped up as an alarm began to blare over the store's intercom. At the same time, thick metal shutters snapped shut over the store's windows and doors while the lights in the store dimmed. Even as the last metal shutter snapped shut, locked into place, the wail of the alarm and the synthesized voice kept ringing out. But with each repeat of the message, the voice became more and more static, slower, and warped. Security breach. SS Seku Yuri Ititaiti Briaya. And then it fizzled out and there was silence. A dim gray silence. The girls looked at each other, each just a little unsettled now that they found themselves locked up inside the store. Kyuka frowned and walked over to one of the shuttered windows. She rapped her knuckles against the metal and winced. Well, this Sue. VZZT clunk. In the silence of the store, the strange sound cut through Kyuka sharply. The sudden silence of an industrial light suddenly getting shut up. VZZT clunk. And again. Slowly, the girls all walked over to where the sound was coming from, the other hallway that Ochako hadn't come running out of. VZZT clunk. One after another, the lights in the hall were going out, creating a black void that none of them could see into. Light after light, the darkness approached. And with a sinking horror, it was getting more and more evident that the lights were going off faster and faster. The four backpedaled away from the hall, into the store's main display room. With one last flicker, the lights in the hall were out, and no one could see into it now. Then, the lights in the room flickered. One went out, and a corner of the room was dark. Then another and another. Light was quickly becoming a scarce resource. Nope. Ochako grabbed Momo and shoved her away, towards the hallway that was still illuminated, not dealing with that. Tsuyu bounded after them with Kyuka hot on their heels. No one wanted to even think about trying to deal with Himiko in the dark. Rushing into the hall, Ochako turned and slammed the door shut. The group took several steps back away from the door, half of them watching it to see if someone tried to break through, while the other half had their eyes up towards the ceiling, looking at the lights. Anyone know where this hallway leads? Ochako asked. Momo had her report unfolded and was quickly looking over the building layout. It looks like this hallway leads towards the workers' break room and the storage warehouse at the back of the building. Okay, then let's head there, Karo. There's a good chance that's also where the rest of the hostages will be, Tsuyu suggested. The group agreed. Hey, Ochako glanced over her shoulder as she stepped back away from the door. Do those layouts have anything about this place's security? I mean, aside from the alarms and the shielded windows? Would love to know how Toga's controlling them, Kyuka grumbled as they started walking down the hall. More than likely she's borrowing something from Mei, Ochako concluded. Remember how she kinda hacked the sports festival that one time? Tsuyu tapped her chin. I mean, she's the teacher of the lesson. I bet teachers have control over everything that's going on in these training areas. Means she can make things act like she wants. Like a damn horror movie? Seems like it, Karo. Momo glanced up from the layout. Let's not forget that we are supposed to be taking this lesson seriously and at face value. We've lost a hostage and Midoriya is dead. Ochako sucked in a breath through her teeth, while the other girls muted themselves. Satisfied that the chatter was toned down, Momo continued to look over the layout. Ah, here we go. Security includes silent and audible alarms, emergency shutters, and door locks. It does have emergency lights in case of power outage, fire suppression systems, and drop seal fire doors. Kyuka blinked. Drop seal what? Basically, they're doors that drop from the ceiling to close off a hallway or something if there's a fire. Helps contain it for the fire suppression staff to put it out, Momo explained. She then glanced up. Ah, here's one. See, this would drop down and seal off the hallway. Tsuyu blinked and looked back towards Momo, while Kyuka and Ochako looked at her. Then they all looked up at the door, everyone giving the sealed-up door in the ceiling their undivided attention. Kyuka frowned. Did we just jinx ours? Slam. The door, without warning, slammed down. On one side, the front two of the group, Tsuyu and Momo, and on the other, the two at the back, Ochako and Kyuka. Oh god damn it. Kyuka rushed forward and started banging on the door. I swear I'm shoving a jack right into Toga's ear for this. A muffled, "Are you alright?" came from the other side. Ochako walked up and cupped her hands up to her mouth. Yeah. We're fine. You? We're good, Karo. Kyuka growled. I don't suppose anyone here can pry this open? Ochako walked up to the door and knelt down. No chance, even if I floated it, it's sunk into a slot in the floor. There's nothing for me to. VZZT clunk. Kyuka's head whirled around, eyes going wide as she saw that the hallway they had been walking down was now starting to go dark. Shit. Kyuka glanced to the side, and saw that while the way forward was now blocked, the hallway did still have another path. Uraraka. Ochako saw what Kyuka was looking at and banged on the door. Go on ahead. The lights are going out here. Kyuka and I will take the way to the break room and meet up with you guys in the warehouse. Good luck. Momo called through the door. The pair took off, rounding the corner just as the lights in the hall they were in went out. Kyuka was huffing as she skidded to a stop at a door labeled break room. Ochako kept her back to her as she walked backwards, eyes on the hallway where they had come from, peering into the darkness. Her head twitched to the side when she heard Kyuka jiggle the door and found it was locked. Seriously? Okay, so what? Kyuka growled as she jammed her ear jacks into the door. Not dealing with this crap. The wooden door began to vibrate before it exploded into splinters. Ochako blinked a few times before whistling. You don't think we'll get points off for property damage, do you? Kyuka flinched, but powered on. Heroes have insurance, right? When Ochako leveled her with a blank stare, Kyuka tried not to look her in the eye. Come on, let's get moving. There should be another door out of here so we can meet up with Tsu and Yaoyorozu. Getting inside the break room, it was a mundane room. Some tables and chairs, a small little kitchenette for people to warm up their lunches or dinners to eat and, like Kyuka was looking for, another set of doors that would get them to the other part of the building. Alright, let's get out of here and, huh? But as Kyuka actually looked around, she noticed things were just slightly amiss. Chairs were knocked over, and some tables pushed aside. Like there had been a fight, perhaps. Then her eyes fell on a closet and a red puddle leaking out from underneath the door. Oh no. Uraraka, we might have another injured hostage. Kyuka threw open the door, ready to either provide aid, or more likely by the amount of blood, confirm another death. She wasn't able to do either as she froze in place, her mind not able to process what she was seeing. It was a moment of complete and utter confusion. Wah! Her mouth was only able to mutter out a confused half-word as she looked down at the slumped-over, blood-soaked corpse of Ochako. Urara! Kyuka didn't even have a chance to turn around before Himiko was behind her, quickly drawing her knife, and slashing across Kyuka's throat, sending blood spraying everywhere. Dead! Reaching the warehouse, Tsuyu had to turn away from the sight while Momo had a hand over her mouth in shock. The room was stained red, blood splashes covered the walls, the floor, the boxed-up merchandise, and some splatter had even reached the ceiling. Bodies were strewn about, with knives sticking out of them, and some still leaking blood onto the floor. The gelatin corpses were just lifelike enough that seeing them left in such a state, in the low light, was enough to send shivers running up the pair's spines. Should we check on them? Momo asked as she looked around. I think so. If someone's still alive, we need to provide aid. Momo nodded, before she reached down at her stomach, which was now glittering blue and purple sparkles, before she created a pair of first aid kits. Here, it's filled with compression bandages and things to help with bleeding and open wounds. Tsuyu took one of the kits. Toga might be hiding amongst the bodies, Karo. Momo's head snapped up and looked at the scene. It just feels like something she'd do. So be careful, Karo. When Uraraka and Jairu get here, it might be a good idea to have her try searching for her. Now that we're inside the building. Splitting up, the pair began working their way in opposite directions. Tsuyu winced as she examined the dummies. Unlike with Midnight and Izuku, the cuts on these were deep, cutting into pouches of either more of the fake blood or something like it, so they looked like they were bleeding. Tsuyu wasn't really sure what she should be looking for, to see if one was alive. Maybe it would be another teacher playing the role. But so far, she wasn't seeing anything. Still, if there was someone alive, they had to find them. Momo? You guys in here? Tsuyu's head snapped up, seeing Ochako come running into the room from the other entrance. Uraraka! Over here! Ochako's came jogging over to her. Tsu? Any luck with Himiko yet? Tsuyu shook her head. No sign of her. Yaoyorozu and I are seeing if there's anyone alive here. Though it looks like she killed everyone, Karo. Yaoyorozu thinks we can find her if Jairu uses her quirk inside. Tsuyu paused and looked around while Ochako walked up beside her. Uraraka? Where's G? Shunk. Himiko put a hand over Tsuyu's mouth as she drove a knife right into Tsuyu's heart and blood splashed all over the concrete floor. Looks like you found me after all. Momo looked around the room, no longer paying attention to the bodies. She had heard Ochako calling for them. Heard her and Tsuyu talking. But now, the room was silent. Sue? Uraraka? Jairu? Why hadn't she heard Kyuka when Ochako found them? The silence of the room made every noise stand out. The way her boots sounded on the concrete floor. The soft hum of the lights. The air conditioning fans spinning on bearings that needed just a little oil. Though it was a wonder she could hear anything over the sound of her own heart thundering away in her ears. Oh, something was wrong. Something was most definitely. Hey there, Momo. Wrong. Ochako was just standing in front of her, smiling brightly. The dim lights casting a dark shadow over her face, except for her smile. Wide and toothy. A deranged smile that looked like it was being pulled over her face. Momo's eyes then traveled down, and she saw all the blood dripping off Ochako's body. Uraraka? Ochako stepped forward, and Momo now could see the knife in her hand. At the same time, her form began to melt. Like hot candle wax, bits and globs began to fall off the young woman's body, splatting onto the ground with every step. As brown hair fell away, blonde began to peek through. Oh, I killed her the moment she and Izuku burst into the room. Himiko's voice was a twisted amalgamation of hers and Ochako's. An unnerving sound that made Momo take a step back. Her eyes wide. You mean? It was you with us the whole time? Yup. Made it so easy to pick you off. Himiko ran her knife against one of the metal tables that had some boxes on it, cutting into it with a screech, making sparks dance along her blade, by one. But the lights, Anne. None of you were ever looking at me when it happened. I was always behind you. Always just out of sight. You all need to learn to pay better attention. Because now, you're all dead. Momo dropped the first aid kit, reaching for her side as she began creating a weapon to defend herself with, but Himiko was already rushing her. Momo had only just made her bow staff when Himiko grabbed her wrist before she could grab it. Flipping her over onto her back, Himiko flipped the blade around in her hand, and drove it down into Momo's chest and stomach, viciously stabbing her to death. Congratulations, all the hostages are dead, you're dead, and the villain escaped, Aizawa stated plainly. You have failed this class on every conceivable level. Izuku, Ochako, Kyuka, Tsuyu and Momo all lowered their heads. So, how'd everyone enjoy my first day as a teacher? Himiko strolled down the street, as Aizawa informed the class the lesson was over. Collectively, the blood-stained group of students turned, and shot her looks of death. Which Himiko just returned with a toothy-fanged smile. I'll take that as a resounding success then? How'd you like me going full Ridley Scott's Predator on your asses? Kyuka, hiding behind Momo, glared daggers at Himiko. What even was the point of all that? Just an excuse to try and traumatize us? Himiko just smirked. If you think this was traumatizing, do I got some bad news for you? Toga, Aizawa cut in. Why don't you explain what you were trying to teach them, then you can get snippy. Oh right, yeah, I guess I still gotta put on my teaching hat. Okay class, Toga-sensei has some things to teach you all. Himiko suddenly getting serious was at odds over the fact that she was only wearing the undergarments of her hero costume. What do you think I was trying to get you all to learn today? There were 3 lessons you all needed to learn. Ochako kept her mouth shut, but there was one of them that you're an enormous bitch really wanted to slip out. Fortunately for the group, Izuku seemed to have an answer, to expect the unexpected? Himiko tapped her nose with a smile before pointing at Izuku. Very good. In fact, that was one of the lessons you guys picked up on. You went into this lesson thinking you were dealing with one thing, but were able to figure out it was a whole different ballgame. Though it did take you a little while. Tsuyu crossed her arms. Then what were the other things? Pay attention to things that don't add up, Himiko answered. Kyuka's Jax pointed at Himiko. How the heck were we supposed to know you had transformed into Uraraka? Himiko looked back at Kyuka with a raised eyebrow. How often does Ochako refer to you guys by your first names? The group blinked. And when have you ever heard her call Izuku anything but Deku? Himiko watched as recognition dawned on Tsuyu, Momo and Kyuka, all three looking like they wanted to die then and there. God damn it. Ochako was starting to hate that there seemed to be some kind of logic to the madness here. Okay, but what about Deku and I? We didn't really have a chance to do anything. That leads into the third and final lesson. Sometimes, the only thing villains want is to kill you. And they're going to do whatever they can to make sure you end up dead. Killing a hostage in front of you like that, of course you all would rush right into an obvious trap. While Izuku and Ochako winced at that, Momo didn't look convinced. That seems extreme. Stain, Izuku sighed. You were playing the role of Stain, weren't you? Himiko shrugged. Stain, or Shigaraki. Look, sometimes things aren't complicated. It's not about money, fame, or status. Sometimes it's just someone wanting you dead. Kyuka frowned. But, aren't those two just outliers? I mean, that's not how it normally is, right? Do you remember how many people followed Shigaraki on his raid to kill All Might? Himiko asked. Kyuka looked uneasy at that question. Just because a villain isn't nicknamed the hero killer, or part of some big league, doesn't mean they aren't out there. Aizawa nodded. The news covered Stain and Shigaraki because of their public attacks. However, many times villain attacks on heroes don't get covered so openly. Either because the attempt failed, or the hero themselves wasn't well known. Or it's just because the papers and the government don't want the idea to spread that there are villains out on the streets that are happy to try their luck. But you need to understand, this is a numbers game, and even if the villains are only successful a percentage of the time, the number of them means that sooner or later, they will get a hero. When he was sure the message had been heard loud and clear, Aizawa dismissed the group, telling them to enjoy their break before it was time for them to head to summer camp. So that just left the kids by themselves. And even if they were taking the lesson to heart, Himiko could still feel the look she was getting as they were making their way back to the main campus. Even when they had made it back to the locker room, Momo was still giving her the stink eye. Himiko just sighed and looked at Momo. You aren't actually mad I taught you a valuable lesson, right? She looked over the rest of her bloodstained friends and classmates as they were getting out of their costumes. You all got the message? Kyuka just kept glaring at her. Oh, we got it. Momo crossed her arms. I think after something like this, that someone on our side deserves to get something called a shot back in retribution. Himiko smirked. Okay, Momo. I get you want a little payback. That's fair, and you're more than welcome to take your shot. But since you're kinda privileged, want me to tell you exactly what you're asking for? Momo frowned and walked up to Himiko as the blonde explained, oh, so you do know, huh? Okay, it's all fair. A rich girl like you getting the crap scared out of her, probably thinks she deserves to get a shot in. So, Himiko stood up straight, put her hands behind her back, closed her eye and poked out her chin. Take your shot. Clang. The sound of something heavy and metal slamming to the ground was not what Himiko expected to hear. She was expecting Momo to either slap her, which seemed like a rich girl thing to do, or maybe punch her. But again, rich girl probably couldn't hit that hard. So, when she opened her eye and found herself on the wrong end of a cannon, she was a little put off. To say the least. What's with the cannon? Momo knelt down and put her hand on the firing mechanism. I'm taking my shot now. Himiko's voice went up an octave as she squeaked out, that is not what I meant by taking a show. Bang! When Midnight came into the room to check on the students, almost certain there might be some words said between them after that shit show of a lesson, she was not surprised to see that someone had taken their pound of flesh out of Himiko's hide. She was surprised to find the girl stuck against a wall, several feet off the ground, with a splatter of quick-drying capture cement holding her in place. Huh, so you're just hanging around? Himiko blared daggers down at Midnight. I fucking hate you. Midnight was amused, if a little conflicted. On one hand, she hated that apparently Himiko was taking a page out of Aizawa's teaching book and was resorting to terrorizing as a method of teaching. But at the same time, Himiko was trying to help her friends. Izuku and Ochako might have a good head on their shoulders with people wanting to kill them, but Momo, Kyuka and Sue? I think they need a crash course. That had been Himiko's explanation when all was said and done last night. So once again, Himiko was showing care and compassion for others. In a very twisted and fucked up kind of way. Hey, so are you going to get me down? Himiko growled out. Midnight looked up at her. You soaked me in your blood packs, right? I had to make things authentic. Midnight turned around and flicked off the locker room lights. Good night, Toga. Oh, you bitch. It suddenly dawned on Izuku, as he helped pack up the rest of the contents for the barbecue into the cooler, that since this was at the beach, there was a very good, almost 100% chance, that he was going to get to see Ochako in a bathing suit. And not the kind that the school issued to them. Izuku gulped loudly as he tried to keep himself focused on the task at hand, but his mind would wander. Would it be frilly? Something like she had worn before, or she'd wear something over it, like she had done back when they had been training at the beach over a year ago. Maybe it would be a two-piece? Oh, if it was a two-piece then he might see. Izuku? Izuku blinked and looked up to see his mother walking into the kitchen, with Eri happily bouncing around beside her. She was carrying a little bucket and shovel and was in some adorable pink beach suspenders. Yee, Izuku cleared his throat after he squeaked. Yeah, Mom? Try not to cook the food before we get to the beach. Okay? Inko had a very knowing but amused look in her eye. Izuku's hand went up to his nose, and waved away the whiffs of smoke. I wasn't. I mean. Inko just chuckled, and took Eri to the living room to wait to leave. Let's get a move on, Izuku. I'm sure you just can't wait to meet everyone at the party. Izuku quickly got everything finished, packed up and loaded into the little wagon to take to the beach. Walking outside, he missed the smile on his mother's face, but did hear her teasing remark, and I'm about to let you and Uraraka spend the next few days off on your own. You know how to make your mother worry so. Mom. Izuku whirled around. Nothing is going to happen. Inko arched an eyebrow. Nothing? And here I thought you were taking her with you so something could happen. Izuku's cheeks flushed and he started rubbing his hands together. I mean. I do wanna, I mean this and that are two completely different things. Oh, I know. But you're going to stand there and say you're not going to try and spend a little time together away from All Might's Eye? Izuku was not about to tell his mother that she was pretty much right on the money and that he really was hopeful that All Might wasn't going to be with them the whole time. Inko could see through her son though, and she gave him a smile. I trust you, and Uraraka. So if the two of you do want some alone time, well I think that would be just fine. Taking Eri's hands, Inko walked off, with Izuku just a little frozen in place. Did Mom just give me permission to sneak off with Uraraka? That means we might be able to. Does this mean I might get to kiss her? Izuku was a walking cloud of smoke by the time he caught up with his mother and Eri, his brain overloaded with all the little things he and Ochako could do away from their chaperone's watchful eye. The food's here. When Izuku arrived at the bead, he saw that apparently he was the last to show up. Mei, dressed in some white beach overalls and a large straw hat, walked up to them, looking hungry. We were wondering how much longer we'd have to wait. Tenya and Hitoshi, both in swim trunks, with Hitoshi in a sleeveless shirt and Tenya in a loose t-shirt and a swim cap over his head, joined her and immediately began helping get the food and barbecue supplies out of the cart Izuku had been pulling, adding it to everything that the group had brought. It's good you're finally here, Midoriya, Hitoshi grunted as he picked up some bags. Now maybe Uraraka will stop asking everyone if we think you'd ACK. Tenya firmly pushed Hitoshi on. Ignore him. Unfortunately even students attending the exemplary UA can become frayed at the edges if they haven't eaten in a while. Izuku blinked. While he was wondering what Hitoshi had been saying about Ochako, he had to wonder, but we're not even late? May picked up one of the last bags. Apparently when you're going to get to have barbecue, you're not supposed to eat it all the day of it. Hitoshi looked over his shoulder at May. If I'm going to have barbecue, I'm making sure I can eat as much as I can. Izuku nodded. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. True, but doing so shouldn't make one so short-tempered, Tenya said with a shake of his head. May just rolled her eyes. Boys are weird. Following his friends, Izuku was led to their reserved spot on the beach where the rest of his friends were waiting. With every step, Izuku tried to prepare himself. Ochako was going to be here. In a swimsuit. And swimsuits tended to show a little more skin than regular clothing. It was perfectly normal. So normal in fact that there should be no reason for him to gawk at Ochako when he saw her. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Oh, Deku. You're here. And, oh. My. God. Izuku was doomed the moment his eyes found Ochako. She was wearing a bright orange and green bikini top, with gold trim separating the colors in circular lines, and with the front tied together with an oh-so-delicate knot. Ochako's skin had a slight dazzling sheen, her suntan lotion made the muscles in her arms and the muscles lining her stomach seem all the more alluring. A white and orange tie-dye sarong was wrapped around her waist. The loose-fitting fabric drapes over her curves, revealing her toned legs and drawing attention to her sculpted but round figure. The swimsuit top was no different from your average swimsuit, but combined with the sarong and the fact Ochako was wearing it, especially when viewed through the eyes of a love-struck boy, it made her irresistibly seductive and tantalizingly beckoned him into the dangerous waters of young love and teenage lust. If there was any saving grace, it was that Ochako herself was a tad preoccupied to notice Izuku's wandering eyes. Lost in those very same waters, her own gaze was getting pulled towards Izuku and what he was wearing. An open loose white unbuttoned shirt that blew in the wind, teasing the hardened pecs and rippling abs Izuku had built from his time training to be a hero. His blue, white and red trimmed swim trunks hung loose around his hips. The cord had become a little loose on the walk to the beach, so Ochako could just make out the point where Izuku's abs ended and his pelvis began. Oh. My. Fucking. God. Fortunately for the two, their open gawking wasn't noticed by anyone, since as soon as the two caught sight of each other and paused to appreciate the view, Himiko hurried up to them and got them both under each arm. Finally. Keeping a beauty like me waiting for my food is a crime, Izuku. Isn't that right, Ochako? Himiko was wearing Daisy Duke shorts that squeezed around her upper thighs. Her top was a decently black swim top with a single strap over one shoulder. Izuku and Ochako were still a little lost, taking a few moments to speak, but at least this time it could be excused because Himiko had their heads pressed into the side of her chest. While Izuku worked to recover and silently thank Himiko for the save, the group made it to the beach. Tsuyu eyed the three, shaking her head when Himiko winked at her before letting the two go, then holding out her hand towards Tsu. Pay up. Tsuyu sighed. She was wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat, a white and green striped boylake swimsuit and a cute white sundress over that, which she was now digging through so she could slip Himiko some cash. One of them couldn't even make it a second, Karo? Himiko's eyes drifted over towards Eri, though the girl was more preoccupied with pointing excitedly towards the ocean and running her feet along the sandy beach. No. No, they couldn't. Hitoshi put down the bags he was carrying. You're not going to make it. Shut up. Totally isn't making it, Karo. Himiko whirled around. Why don't you two go F? Hate this. Easy money, Ochako said with a smirk, now back to her senses too. Izuku frowned, eh? May hummed as she started digging through some of the bags to help get everything laid out. We all took bets on if Toga would make it the whole day without swearing in front of Eri. Tenya shook his head. Betting on something like this is childish. May looked up. So, do you want your money back? I didn't say that. hate all of you. Himiko grumbled. Inko leaned in with the group. So what's the action? Mom? If she swears or not, and then it's pre-meal, mid-meal or post-meal, May explained. Inko looked over at Himiko before digging into her pockets and fished out some 1,000 yen notes. She'll break at the end. Betrayal. Himiko threw up her hands. Izuku couldn't believe his mother while Inko just waved him off. Oh, it's all in good fun, Izuku. Izuku huffed. At least bet for her. Here, Izuku pulled out some yen as well, she makes it. Put my money with Uraraka's. Ochako looked away, whistling a little tune, while Himiko growled, she bet pre-meal. Uraraka. Izuku looked aghast while Ochako immediately went on the defensive. Oh, don't you even try that, mister. Even Toga didn't want to bet on herself. Izuku's head snapped to look at Himiko, who instead turned to look at the ocean. Just because I'm a realist, doesn't make the betrayal hurt any less. You were going to pick mid-meal, came the calm voice of Shudo, the last member of the group Izuku hadn't seen yet. Todoroki, you at least didn't, Izuku trailed off when he turned to look at his half-and-half friend. What's with the towel? I think Toga is jealous I look better in my swimwear than she does, Shudo answered honestly. Wah! Himiko screamed, pulling at her hair. That's not swimwear. Itafu, her rant came to an abrupt stop when she saw Eri come out from behind Izuku, her big eyes wide as she looked up at her excitedly. Reeking loincloth. Eri pouted, kicking her feet into the sand. Ah, she didn't say any fun words. Before anyone could address that alarming statement, Shudo crossed his arms and coldly looked at Himiko. It is not a loincloth. A fundoshi is a form of swimwear worn in this country for generations. Izuku looked at Shudo, noting that he wasn't wearing a shirt, then looked down. A fundoshi is a little. Ochako scratched behind an ear. We all kinda agreed that it might be best if he covered up. After Toga kinda wrapped him up and threatened to bifurcate him. Shudo just shook his head. It's jealousy. I see this behavior all the time when my sister is watching her soaps. Hysterical women will behave irrationally once threatened. While Himiko didn't say it out loud, the bitch did you just was oozing out of every orifice in her face. Hitoshi leaned over to whisper to Mei, did we say anything about violence, or just the swears? Swears. Well, at least Eri's going to get a show. Hitoshi pointed to Eri who was back, watching the interaction with rapt attention. Ah, it's so cute how she wants to watch her auntie kill someone. That's one way to describe it, Hitoshi said, not sure if this wasn't the start of Eri's villain origin story. Let's just, Himiko pressed her hands together and took a breath through her nose, make one thing crystal clear. I am not jealous of you. You've done nothing to make me feel jealous. Besides those women coming up and just throwing themselves at him, Hitoshi slipped in. Izuku's eyes went wide. Wait, really? Shudo just looked bored, and a little confused. It did happen. And no one has come up to Toga yet. So she's upset. Ignoring Himiko's pointed reply, Shudo continued. Though how they tried to flirt was confusing. There was no exchange of handkerchiefs or pieces of embroidery. Minus Izuku, Mei and Eri, everyone at that moment was looking at Shudo with varying degrees of shock at just how old his idea of flirting was. They mostly just asked if I would like to join them at one of the changing tents. Izuku's head tilted to the side. The changing tents? You were already in your swimwear, right? I was. Then why would they be asking you to come to one of those tents if you're already changed? Shudo agreed with a sagely nod. It's very strange. The group now had something else to look shocked about. Inko was seriously wondering if she was going to have to give her son the talk again, while the rest were looking at them and realizing in horror that it was possible for someone else to be as dense and naive as Izuku. Himiko leaned over towards Ochako and whispered, "And this is the boy you're desperate to get some quality alone time with. Good luck trying to get him to understand how anything works." Ochako shot back under her breath, "Oh, you're just as bad. No. You're all kind and romantic about it. So you're gonna put water wings on him and hold his hand in the kiddie pool." Ochako blinked, not entirely sure she was following the analogy, and kinda wished Himiko would just say it. And not just because she was pretty sure that would mean she'd win the bet. "Okay, so if I'm in the kiddie pool with Deku, what are you doing? Kicking him off the high dive and watching him drown in the deep end. Okay, so that sounds worse than it actually is." Himiko laughed nervously. "You think?" Ochako whisper-screeched back at her. Ochako then took a moment, before adding with a red blush in her cheeks, "You know, half the fun might just be teaching Deku how to swim." While Himiko grinned wickedly, Tsuyu looked over at the pair and muttered, "I'm a very good swimmer, Karo." Now that everyone had arrived, the party could begin. As the wood for the grill was lit and let burn down into coals, the kids were able to just relax. Holding Eri's hand, Ochako took Eri to splash around in the ocean shallows and race the small waves back and forth as they broke on the beach. And Tsuyu would carry Eri on her back, taking her out into deeper water with a mask and snorkel so she could see some of the pretty fishes and coral along the seafloor. May had brought a small basket with her, filled with things to tinker with as she sat on a beach towel. Himiko found herself as the acting referee for the boys, who had found a beach volleyball net and were in the middle of a friendly game. Izuku and Shuto versus Tenya and Hitoshi. To the boys' credit, the game had started off innocently enough. Just a casual game with a leering girl totally not playing favorites with her calls. Things took a turn when during the middle of a serve, Hitoshi called out Shuto's name. Shuto had replied with just a short, "Huh?" And that was all it took for Hitoshi to freeze him in place and let Tenya spike the ball right at his feet. "That's not fair," Izuku complained to the ref. Himiko though had enjoyed the move too much, so she said it was fine. "After all, you boys never said no quirks allowed." From there, the game turned into a small reenactment of UAS Sports Festival. Ice would freeze the sand underneath someone's feet, sending them face first into the sand. The ball would suddenly glow and make a sharp turn to avoid a player's hand. Tenya seemed to think the game was football and leapt into the air to deliver an engine-powered kick to the ball, the impact of which created a small crater in the beach. Before things got too out of hand, Inko stepped in, much to Himiko's displeasure. She had been getting one hell of a show. So after saving the little beach volleyball court, Inko put the boys to work getting everything ready for grilling. The thin yakiniku-style meats were put on their skewers, and placed with the squid skewers, the meat sizzling as it hit the grill. Fresh corn on the cob, still in its husk, was placed on the grill to start cooking. Inko sat and began making onigiri and slowly, the smell of the barbecue wafted out over the group's little section of beach and pulled the remaining members of the group towards the grill and table. With so many hands to help, the food was grilled, and soon everyone was filling up their plates. Itadakimasu. Digging in, everyone happily munched away. Eri, still excited from her swim, kept going back and forth from eating and talking wildly. And then we saw all these fishes and I almost got close enough to touch one. "Can I go swim some more later?" When Inko looked over at Tsuyu, she nodded happily. "I'd be happy to take her out some more, Karo." "Yay!" Hitoshi took a large bite of one of his beef skewers. "Oh, so did you guys see the entertainment channel was rebroadcasting the sports festival the other night? But they had these quirk and hero analysts talking through it." Tenya nodded. "Oh yes. My brother pointed it out to me." No, I didn't see that," Ochako muttered. "Was dealing with getting blood out of my hair most of the day." Himiko whistled and looked away when Ochako, Izuku and Tsuyu glared at her. "Ah, well considering you two," Hitoshi motioned towards Izuku and Ochako, "aren't at each other's throats, I guess that makes sense." Izuku blinked while Ochako just looked lost. "Eh?" May chuckled. "Oh right. All those make-believe fights they did." "I'm sorry, what?" Ochako put down her corn. What fights? While the analysts only briefly spent time on the first two events, they went into extreme and unnecessary detail about the tournament. Tenya explained, they may have alleged that certain matches were made to give some of us participating an easier chance to win. Ochako frowned. What does that even mean? A couple of the guys on TV sorta implied that Midoriya was given easier or better matched opponents so he could win. Because All Might was interested in him, Hitoshi made hand quotes for that last bit. Izuku almost choked while Ochako looked pissed off. Swallowing down a slice of pork, Izuku coughed out, "What match did I have that was easy?" Mei raised her hand and Izuku just looked aghast. Seriously? Yeah, I wasn't. What did they say I was again? Mei asked, making it clear she hadn't really cared enough about the whole thing to even remember. Hitoshi cleared his throat for dramatic effect. A clear symptom of UA's modern age. Take it affirmative action for those that shouldn't even have been allowed to take place in the event in the first place. Himiko stopped eating her rice ball. The foo. The heck does that mean? They brought up that the sports festival should really just be limited to the hero classes and that trying to get everyone involved at a minimum cheapens the event and at worst calls into question the rest. Shuto explained. There's a growing feeling that the sports festival should focus more on the next generation of heroes and less on the supporting cast no one cares about. Izuku's face scrunched up. Gross. Ochako was equally disgusted. Supporting cast no one cares about? They didn't actually say that, did they? Tenya sighed. Unfortunately. Though there was severe pushback from some of the other hosts. So it wasn't an opinion shared by all. Izuku rubbed his brow. Do these people know that this is our school's sports day? Not letting everyone take part is just messed up. Also, isn't the sports festival the place where the people in general studies can have a chance to move into the hero classes? Hitoshi pointed at Izuku as he nodded. Exactly. It was what I was planning on if my entrance exam fell through. Inko, who had been sitting quietly, took a bite of her food. I'm still wondering how these analysts seem to think my poor boy had it easy. Eri looked at Inko, then towards the upset Ochako, before poking Himiko. Say one of the fun words. I think you're supposed to. Himiko hated that Eri was technically right. Because she did have some choice words. But she also wanted that money. So she held her tongue. Well, there was Hatsum and her whole quirk affirmative action thing. Then there was the whole thing with Yanagi, Hitoshi continued. Izuku groaned. We had a psychic battle. How is that anything but cool? Suyu tapped her chin. To be fair, it kinda just looked like you two were just standing around, grunting and making faces at each other. Yeah. Kinda. Pretty much. So, Hitoshi continued. The general feeling is that you kinda didn't have your first match until Bakugou. Though, Tenya quickly added, the other hosts and analysts pushed back against this too. So this isn't some agreed upon idea. The shock jock is known for his wild takes. Izuku chomped on some pork. This is my life. Even when I win I lose. No one has it rougher than me. Ahem? Himiko raised an amused eyebrow. I alone shoulder the heaviest burdens. Izuku, do you think you're being cute? Himiko asked, amusingly taking another bite of onigiri and chasing it with some grilled squid. I am adorable and you know it, Izuku teased with a Disney smile and batted his eyelashes. Himiko choked and turned away while Ochako had to keep a hand over her mouth so she didn't spit out her own food. While the pair recovered, Izuku turned back to the rest of his friends. So ignoring this one guy's take, if I shouldn't have one, who do they say should have? They switched up the podium results so that it was a toss-up between Bakugou and Todoroki, Tenya answered. It was one of the theorized matches they spent a great deal of time on. Ochako grumbled under her breath while Shuto scooched away from her. While he was pretty sure he wasn't the one currently the target of Ochako's ire, he also knew that Ochako might hold a small grudge against him for how their match played out. So since he was part of the conversation making her upset, there was a small, but not non-zero, chance she might make him the target of her wrath, since he was within arm's reach. Ochako was about to make it pretty well known just how annoyed she was over this, when she recalled how the conversation had started. Wait, you said this would have me and Deku at each other's throats. All I want is Bakugou's throat. Oh, well, when they switched up the podium results, they had you and Midoriya paired against each other. Izuku and Ochako heads snapped up at that. And they briefly wondered which one of you would win, but ended up just spending time theorizing about Todoroki and Bakugou's match. Hitoshi pointed between the two. So I figured you two might have thoughts on that subject, considering how competitive you guys are. Mei leaned forward. Who would win between the two of you? I would. Was the immediate answer they two gave. That got some laughs from the group while Izuku and Ochako turned and glared at each other. Tsuyu held up a hand. We are talking tournament rules, right, Karo? Not out in the field, with their gear and support items? I'd say yeah, let's go with that, Himiko agreed. Mei hummed. So right off the bat, this isn't going to be a flashy fight. Heck, I'd say it's gonna devolve into what yours and Uraraka's was. Mei pointed between Himiko and Ochako. It'll be a slugfest. Hitoshi held up a hand. Hold on, Midoriya has Psychokinesis and Boric. Boric Pyre is after, Mei reminded. Well, he still has Psychokinesis. He'd just be able to throw Uraraka out of the ring. Not true, Shudo stepped in. He wasn't able to do that to anyone during his matches, except Yanagi, but they had an agreement to only win with their quirks. When his quirk is acted upon a person, its effect is weakened. So, Midoriya would have nothing to throw around like he had in his other matches. I suppose he could try and break off chunks of concrete, but Ochako would probably get him while he was focused on that. Meaning he would have to rely on his hand-to-hand combat skills. And Uraraka's quirk would mean she'd have to touch him. So this would be an up-close brawl like Hatsum has suggested. Hitoshi nodded. Okay, but could Midoriya even do that? I mean, considering the, well, you know. I've punched Uraraka in the face many times. I have no problem fighting her, Izuku stated simply. He blinked at his friend's strange looks while Ochako just rubbed her head. The training we did before. It involved a lot of sparring, Ochako clarified. Tsuyu thought about it. Then this is really just a question over which of the two is the better fighter. There was a brief pause before everyone answered at roughly the same time, Uraraka. Wait, what? Izuku looked around a little miffed. Hold on. Himiko laughed, Izuku, you are a battering ram. You hit something and you drop it. Heck, I've been you and thrown your hands. You throw a mean punch, but that's kinda all you do. So I hit Uraraka and drop her, Izuku said confidently. Ochako squinted her eyes. You would not drop me. I would. Would not. Totally. Get real. I've done it. That was one time and it doesn't count. You literally said, give me your best shot, and I dropped you like a sack of bricks. And it also wasn't the first time either and you know it. Ahem. Himiko cleared her throat. If you two are done being weird, Himiko gave the pair of playfully arguing teens a chance to compose themselves. Izuku can throw a mean punch, but Ochako is a better fighter. It's the classic boxer versus martial artist debate, Mei quipped. Exactly. Ochako has way more tools to bring to a fight. Izuku crossed his arms, pouting. You guys know that I've won just as many sparring matches with Uraraka as I've lost, right? We have a running tally and I'm pretty sure it's dead even. It is, Ochako confirmed. With a few ties. Okay, but, Himiko held up a finger, have you sparred with her since she started going to UA? No. Actually, we haven't. That's kinda strange. We like sparring. We do, but we've been busy with school. We should try and find some time. Kinda miss it, Ochako said with a sigh. As I was saying, Himiko cut in. Ochako has been trained by heroes to make her a better fighter. Like just take all the time she's spent with Miruko. And you've, Himiko thought about a nice way to put this, have kinda only stuck with quirk-based training. But, I mean, I could punch her like, really hard. Izuku said in his defense. And she could punch you, kick you, and she knows grapple moves, Hitoshi listed off. I can headbutt, Izuku said with a pout before shooting Ochako a dirty look as she was just eating everything up. Izuku, given how your quirk has, Himiko scratched her chin as she searched for the right way to put this, evolved recently, maybe you should look into things other than punches. Like maybe learn how to throw a kick. Izuku glanced down at his own legs as she kept going. I mean, when you think about it, that's 2 big muscles you could be using right there. That's not a bad point, Izuku said while scratching his chin. Uraraka, do you two think you could give me some pointers? Ochako, who up until that point was basking in everyone's praise, snapped to attention real fast when she heard that. Huh? Wait, me? Ochako began scratching the back of her neck, a red blush starting to spread over her face. I mean, yeah. I'd be happy to. With the main meal done, everyone went back to relaxing on the beach as the sun began to set. Ochako sighed as she sprawled out on a large beach towel, watching as Izuku and Tenya were busy getting a campfire started so the group could enjoy a small dessert in the evening. Eri was being kept back, with Himiko and Hitoshi's help, so that it would be a surprise for her. Uraraka, Karo? Ochako turned her eyes to see Tsuyu crouched next to her. She looked a little nervous, hands pinching the fabric of her sundress between her fingers. Do you have a second? Ochako sat up and scooched over, making room for Tsuyu on the towel. Sure. You alright? Ochako tried to think of the last time she had seen Tsuyu nervous. And honestly, she couldn't think of such a time. Tsuyu took the offered place and sat down. I'm fine. I was just wondering if we could talk. And if I could get your advice on something. And I suppose, your opinion. Oh. Sure. Ochako scratched her cheek. But, I'm not really sure what advice I could give you on things. I'm not exactly worldly or anything. It's about Toga. Toga? Ochako frowned before glancing over to where she was giving Eri a piggyback ride while chasing Hitoshi. Eri had a small plastic shovel in her hand, but the way she was holding it and swinging it around made it look like she had a big OL knife and was trying to stab poor Hitoshi. What did she do now? And nothing. Tsuyu was quick to reply. She hasn't done anything. Please stop looking at her. She might get suspicious. Ochako did as asked, and gave Tsuyu a slightly worried look. You sure you're okay? You two aren't having a fight or anything? Her lesson the other day was rough, but I think it came from a good place. Tsuyu shook her head. No, it's nothing like that. This is something different. And a little personal. Personal? Yeah. So if you don't want to answer or talk about this, I'll understand. Sue, you can always talk to me. That's what being friends is for. Ochako flashed Sue a bright smile, trying to reassure her. I really like Toga. Eh? Ochako had to take a moment to let that sink in. Like? As in. I really like her. Oh. Ochako's eyes went wide, and despite herself, her head snapped around to look at Himiko before snapping back to Tsuyu. Like as in, love? Tsuyu fidgeted. I don't know for sure. It feels weird saying it like that since we've only met a few months ago. I just know that after she saved my life at the USJ, I started thinking about her a lot. And now, recently it's more than just a lot, and when I do, my heart just beats so fast. Ochako remembered the event Tsuyu was talking about. They were on that boat in the USJ's flood zone, and Tsuyu was about to get attacked by a shark villain. Himiko had rescued Tsuyu before she could get hurt. It was a brutal rescue, but Himiko had saved Tsuyu all the same. If not for the blood and dismemberment, Ochako could almost see it as the kind of romantic start in a cheesy fantasy romance. Sue's got a crush on Toga. Oh boy. Uraraka, you're close with Toga, Tsuyu stated, with Ochako nodding. And I know. Toga loves you. Ochako's mouth fell open, but Tsuyu kept going before Ochako could sputter out a response. And that she's also in love with Midoriya. I just wanted to know, how do you feel about her? How I feel about Toga? If Ochako was wearing a top with a collar, she'd be pulling at it right about now. Deku. I know how you feel about him. I think everyone knows now. Ochako still wasn't sure if she liked that or not, but what about Toga? This was a surprisingly personal question coming from Tsuyu. But Ochako guessed it wasn't that surprising when she put everything together. Tsuyu somehow knew about how Toga felt. And now Ochako knew how Tsuyu felt. She was kinda the last piece of the puzzle. So really, it was a fair question to ask. She's special. She's very special to me. Maybe it was a lame answer, but it was the truth. Do you love her? Well fuck, Sue. Just go for my throat. Ochako thought back on everything she had been through with Himiko. The rough start and then how things had changed. She remembered just how damn good that kiss had been. The memory alone made her lips feel a little warm. I do, but Ochako searched for the right words. She wasn't about to say she saw Himiko as a sister or anything. It wasn't a familiar love she felt for her, but it's like, I love her more than a friend, but less than a lover. That was the closest she could really get to putting her relationship with Himiko into words. Tsuyu tapped her chin as she thought over what Ochako had said. Ochako looked at her for any sign that Tsuyu was unsatisfied with her answer. Not the easiest task, as Tsuyu was, more often than not, pretty hard to read. At the very least, she didn't seem upset. That's a lot like what Midoriya said. Ochako's ears perked up hearing that. Wait? Deku? What does Deku have to do with this? And actually, now that Ochako thought about it, there were some things that were super weird for Tsuyu to know. Like how she knew how Himiko felt about Izuku and herself. Midoriya came to talk to me after my final exam while I was recovering in the nurse's clinic. Ochako leaned forward, looking at Tsuyu suspiciously. Deku came to talk to you? Tsuyu nodded. Yes. He came to give me relationship advice. You could hear a pin drop from a mile away in the stunned silence that had fallen over Ochako. Though it didn't last very long. After Ochako picked her jaw out of the sand, she screeched, Deku did what? Ochako's scream grabbed a few people's attention. In fact, it grabbed everyone's attention. Izuku snapped to attention and looked over at them, looking like someone that had gotten caught with their hand in the cookie jar, though he also had no idea why he felt like he just got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to have done. Ochako was equal parts stunned, confounded, stupefied, and lost. She looked at Tsuyu, then looked over at Izuku, who looked like he didn't know what to do, while his friends were putting some distance from him. Getting out of the blast zone, as it were. Then she turned back to look at Tsuyu while pointing at Izuku. Him? Yeah. Deku? Aha. He was giving you relationship advice? Yup, Karo. When was this? He came to see me when I was in Recovery Girls Clinic after my exam. Like I just said, Tsuyu explained. And why did he suddenly start giving you advice? Tsuyu tapped her chin. Because, Karo. He noticed that I was crushing pretty hard. Ochako sat there for a second. He noticed you were crushing on Toga. I think I have to slap Deku on principle. Karo? He noticed you, while I'm out there doing probably the worst job imaginable hiding how I felt. He notices you. Oh God, my head hurts. While Ochako suffered an existential crisis, the cause of said crisis gingerly walked up to the pair, taking each step like he was walking through a minefield. Hey, is everything, Izuku gulped when Ochako glared at him, okay? Ochako was trying oh so hard not to sound cross with Izuku. Was just talking to me about your talk with each other. And about Toga. Oh? It took a quick second before it quickly dawned on Izuku what that meant. Oh. So, Deku, you're handing out relationship advice now? Izuku's eyes drifted down to look at Ochako, her icy gaze a perfect match for the frost in her voice. Quick brain. Need ideas now. Well, who better? Ice was becoming arctic, but Izuku continued, just do the opposite of everything I've ever done or said. I'm the perfect bad example. Snort. Ochako quickly turned away as she tried not to laugh. Izuku meanwhile was giving his brain a high five for getting him out of that mess. Honestly, after our talk, I guess I just noticed some things I wouldn't before and, considering it was Toga, kinda wanted to give Sue a heads up she can be a little. Izuku waved his hand in a SOSO gesture. Well, you know. Nuts, crazy, borderline psychotic? Ochako listed off. Borderline? Izuku questioned, before both he and Ochako burst into giggles. Suyu looked between the two. Wow. You both really do care about her the same way, don't you? Caro. Izuku looked at Ochako questioningly. Ochako summed up the conversation so far while making room for Izuku to sit with them. Izuku agreed, Ochako pretty much hit the nail on the head. I wonder. What'll all those feelings mean if, Suyu blushed. If I confess? Ochako asked gently. Honestly, Sue, I have no idea. I mean, I'm still trying to figure things out with this dork. Maybe. I dunno, don't worry about it? Izuku offered. I think we all know that having any kind of relationship with Toga means things are gonna be abnormal, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. Suyu ran a finger through the sand. I guess it boils down to if I'm okay that the girl I really like, has feelings for other people. She looked at Izuku and Ochako who were watching her just as closely. Or if those feelings will get in the way of the feelings I have for her and maybe the ones she'd have for me. Ochako shrugged. To be fair, nothing really gets in the way of Toga's feelings. If she loves you, she loves you. No ifs, ands, or buts. So you both think I should confess? Yup. Absolutely. Suyu riveted nervously. Why you're both so sure? Izuku looked at Ochako who looked back at him. We might have thoughts on the subject of waiting around. Ochako snorted again as she agreed with a laugh. Then, how should I do it? Suyu asked. How do you think I should confess to Toga? If it's like you said and love is a switch for her, how do I make sure I flip that switch? Ochako rubbed her chin, giving that some thought, while Izuku muttered away under his breath. Then, with a snap of his fingers, seemed to figure it out. Probably the best way to get Toga's attention and confess to her would be to just walk up to her and kiss her, Izuku said confidently. Suyu's already large eyes almost doubled in size while she clutched at her straw hat and brought it down to cover her face, hiding the massive blush that was spreading everywhere and working its way down her neck. KK kiss, Caro? Izuku scratched his head and chuckled nervously. I mean, yeah. Ochako kinda hated how that made sense and it was Izuku being the one to say it. Just kiss her, he says. How about you just fucking kiss me already? Suyu peeked over the wide brim of her straw hat. I can't just walk up to Toga and kiss her. Would you just walk up to Uraraka and kiss her? I'd love to. I mean. It was Izuku's turn to blush, but he did his best to shake it off. Ochako though, initially looking excited, was now looking at him hard as he avoided the question. We're not talking about Uraraka. We're talking about Toga. And you know how she is. Direct, Caro, Suyu answers, croaking nervously, because the more she thought about it. Thought about who she had a crush on and how she went about being so open about things. Direct and unequivocal action might just be what she'd need to do to get her feelings across. And if she wanted to flip Himiko's love switch, words alone might not be enough. Oh, I'm going to kiss Toga. It really dawned on Tsuyu at that moment that if she was going to do this, she couldn't take half measures. Should I use my tongue? Yes, absolutely, Izuku answered immediately, before he got a blush that matched Tsuyu's. And maybe, bite your lip, or something. Tsuyu pulled her hat down, and reached up with a finger and ran it over her lip. So she can taste your blood, yeah. Offering something like that to her at the same time would be something special, Izuku offered. Ochako fucking hated, that Izuku was probably batting 100 with his advice right now. Well, honestly, she wasn't really mad at him, just mad that apparently Himiko came easy to him while she, the fucking normal one, was some great mystery. Why are you so sure this is the best idea? Tsuyu asked nervously. Well, it's what she did with us, Izuku answered with a blushing smile. Tsuyu was shocked, and looked at Izuku, then at Ochako, who was also blushing now. As she kissed you, Karo? Yeah, she did while I was at the hospital in Hosu City, Izuku confirmed. Tsuyu then pointed at Ochako. And you? Oh yeah, Ochako huffed out, trying not to think too hard on everything else Himiko had done during it. It was pretty intense. Ochako elbowed Izuku's side. Deku was jealous when he learned. While Izuku playfully swatted Ochako away, he finished his thought, so yeah. If she's fine giving the kiss, I'm sure the opposite is true. Are you ready for the surprise, Eri? Izuku asked as he walked Eri over to the fire where everyone else was getting settled down in small lawn chairs and tables placed around it. The sun had set, and now the area was lit by the fire's soft orange glow. Eri was excited for sure, every step had a bounce that went along with it. Yes. Getting Eri to sit down, Izuku handed her a long metal poker, which she looked at in confused wonder. Is this a toga toy? Himiko frowned. Eri made some poking motions with the prong. See? Put the pointy end into. Inko reached over and laughed as she got Eri to stop. No. That's not how this is used. Izuku shot Himiko a look while the other girl held up her hands. That is not on me. Tenya adjusted his glasses. I may need to ask Midnight Sensei to look into teaching you how to properly act in front of a small impressionable child. The metal prong in Himiko's hands moved so it was pointed at Tenya. You try, and see what happens. Ochako reached over and whacked Himiko upside the head to get her to calm down. See the pointy end goes. Look, Eri. Marshmallows. Izuku quickly pulled out a giant plastic bag full of golf ball-sized soft spongy treats. She immediately reached for the bag, but Izuku waved a finger. Hold on. This is only part of the surprise. Inko then took out the chocolate bars and some boxes of graham crackers and passed them around so there were some on the tables between the chairs. Eri looked at the other treats, wondering what they were for. She eyed the chocolate bars hungrily. As the marshmallow bag was opened and its contents passed around, Izuku plucked one of the treats and, with his other hand, helped Eri hold up her little poker. Okay, now hold this up, okay? Eri nodded, watching as Izuku poked the end of the metal into the white sugary cloud. We're gonna make some s'mores. And first, moving Eri's hands out so the poker and marshmallow was hovering over the fire, we gotta roast these. That way, it's soft and sticky when you stick it between the chocolate and cracker. Eri nodded, eyes wide, and while maybe not understanding exactly what a s'more was, she did know she wanted to eat one. Slowly Izuku started to turn the poker in Eri's hands. See, just keep turning it slowly, and soon the marshmallow will get nice and toasted. Then I'll show you how to put it all together, alright? Eri nodded again, very fast, which got some chuckles from the group. Soon everyone was getting their pokers tipped with marshmallows to toast away. Though one mad lad was busy sticking his poker into the fire. Shinso, you must be careful. You will burn the marshmallow like that. And we don't want to waste them. Some may want multiple snacks, Tenya warned with a hand chop. Hitoshi ignored him. You want a good more, you gotta burn the marshmallow to get it nice and goopy. You're weird, Ochako said with a shake of her head. You all are cowards. Debates on overcooking marshmallows aside, Himiko seemed to be in the mood for more than just a sweet treat. She was hungry for a little gossip. So, Izuku, Himiko began innocently enough, as she stabbed her marshmallow onto her little metal roasting stick. Oh. Look out, Midoriya, Hitoshi deadpanned while cooking, burning his. This can't be good. Hey! I'm just making innocent polite conversations here, Himiko countered, pointing the metal poker at Hitoshi. You can be innocent? Shudo seemed genuinely surprised, which got a round of chuckles from the rest of the group. Himiko just huffed and started roasting while Izuku helped Eri rotate her marshmallow a little so one side didn't get too brown. It's alright, Toga. What did you want? Well, I was just curious what you plan to do with Ochako on your date. Ochako and Izuku both went a little red. Since I'm not going to get to be there to watch. Stalk. Watch, Himiko flipped Mei off, after making sure Eri was too fascinated by her roasting treat to notice. I want to hear the details. Shudo leaned over, and asked quietly, does that count for the bet or? Hitoshi said, she has to say it. We didn't think ahead to hand gestures. Izuku blushed and looked down at the roasting treat. Well, you do have a plan, right? Izuku nodded, aware that Ochako was looking right at him. I do, yes. I did some research about the different attractions and events. Himiko smirked. There wouldn't happen to be a tunnel of love ride at the expo? Is there? There is. I mean. Izuku coughed. There might be. Possibly. Some attractions are advertised as couple-friendly. While Izuku looked embarrassed at possibly getting caught looking up an embarrassing kissing ride, Ochako had a look that only Himiko had seen before. Lightly dazed and with a smile making her puffy cheeks dimple. It was the look she had after Himiko had given her one hell of a first kiss. So Himiko knew Ochako was quite happy at the idea of the ride. And she very clearly had less than pure intentions. Izuku may just come out of the ride a changed man after Ochako was through with him. But yeah. I've given this a lot of thought, though. Izuku scratched his neck. There is one thing I can't really factor in. Oh, Karo? All Might. His friends hissed in sympathy. All of Izuku's plans and desires to take Ochako on a fantastical date were more or less going to hit a brick wall whenever All Might got factored in. I mean, he may be the number one hero, but he's kinda a dunce. You could ditch him, Himiko offered. That would be wholly inappropriate, Toga, Tenya chastised. Plus the first thing he's going to do if he loses sight of us is call Mom, Izuku said with certainty. I don't want to be getting a phone call from my mom because of that. Turn your phone off? Himiko offered, but an ahem from Inko sent a shiver up the girl's spine. Never mind. Though, All Might does have a friend on the island. He may want to go see them. Izuku recalled, some hope in his voice that maybe there might be a window there for himself and Ochako to get to have some private fun. Ochako gasped, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh no. What if All Might says we have to stay in our rooms while he's out visiting his friend? Whatever will we do? Some snickers came from around the fire and Ochako swore she saw Inko smirk at her. A very knowing smirk. Which wasn't a no as far as Ochako could tell. It honestly seemed like she was giving the go-ahead here. We might not get to do anywhere near as much as we want if All Might isn't around to make sure we're acting like proper UA students during our date. 'Cause we'd never just go to the expo without him. Shudo pulled his poker back and examined his golden roasted marshmallow. So if he does just leave, does that mean that's the end of the date? Mei frowned. Would he just do that? Himiko chuckled. You haven't seen him try to be a teacher. He's a scatterbrain with stuff like this. She then reached over and patted Izuku on the back. You poor boy. Working up the courage to ask Ochako out and now having to deal with the fact that All Might might not be there to look after you. It's such a shame you're a responsible goody-goody. Otherwise just think of all the trouble you could get into. Himiko shot Ochako a knowing look. Izuku did imagine what it would be like if it was just him and Ochako alone. And his cheeks heated up at all the little ideas he started to have. Ochako was just grinning now. Oh, this was an opportunity. If that's the case then, Midoriya and Uraraka are in luck, Tenya said suddenly, getting a few confused and maybe slightly worried looks. What are you talking about, Ida? Ochako asked carefully. She had a sinking suspicion she wasn't going to like this. My brother's agency, Team Ida 10, receives tickets for the pre-show annually. As he can't go this time, I was asked to go in his place to represent the agency. Tenya missed the growing looks of horror that was spreading over Ochako, Izuku and even Himiko and Tsuyu's faces. While I initially planned to keep my distance so that you two could enjoy your time together, if All Might has commitments that may impede his ability to keep an eye on both of you, then I will happily assume my position as class representative and make sure you two are able to continue your date as your chaperone. Stab? Himiko asked as she leaned over. Ochako didn't immediately answer as she continued to just gawk at Tenya and the idea that somehow, as their class rep, it gave him the right to act as her and Izuku's chaperone on their date. The fucking thing she has been patiently waiting for way too long. Damn it, I want to get my smooch on with Deku and not have people looking over my shoulder. Is that so wrong? Dude, I'm pretty sure your class rep rights stop at the school, Hitoshi pointed out. Nonsense. Clearly Midoriya and Uraraka are worried they'll not be able to spend adequate time together if All Might wishes to visit his friend. That was not the case at all. So it is up to me to fill in if such an occurrence arises. Also, as they are invited due to a UA event, they are still my responsibility. As their representative and friend, I must make sure I'm available for them. Clearly Tenya had missed the fact that Izuku and Ochako were hopeful that All Might would leave them alone. Not worried about it. Stab? Ochako breathed in through her nose as she seriously considered the pros and cons of having her friend murdered on the beach. Can you stab him just enough for him to not be there? Okay, now you take the other cracker and use it to smush the marshmallow. See, like this, Izuku demonstrated for Eri and showed off the finished s'more. The golden brown skin cracked along the gooey center as it was squished down into the softening chocolate bar. Eri was quick to mimic what she saw, and cheered as she made her very first s'more. Can I eat it now? Yup, but be careful. It'll be a little hot and you don't want to burn your tongue, Izuku warned while taking a big bite himself. Yummy! Eri happily yelled. Then looked at her fingers. And sticky. The perfect combo, Himiko whispered to Tsuyu and Ochako under her breath with a little laugh. Both girls flushed and Ochako shoved her away. Don't be gross. You took my swearing, I gotta have fun somehow here, Himiko said while sticking out her tongue. Soon everyone was getting their desserts put together. While they did, Mei was hit with a thought. Hey Midoriya. Izuku hummed, mouth slightly sealed shut with white sugary goo. Doesn't the Expo have like 1,000 things to do? And you have it planned out? How'd you manage that? By the time everyone had turned to hear Izuku's answer, they were momentarily startled to see him holding a composition notebook. Oh, I made sure to look over everything I could so Uraraka will have the best time. Like which food vendors will have her favorite foods, which rides won't upset her stomach since there are also quirk-related games, and what? Izuku saw that everyone was looking at him, and the book in his hand. At first, Ochako was going to ask where Izuku had pulled his hero analysis for the future notebook from, since they were at the freaking beach and he was in swim trunks. But that question died when she saw that the book he was holding wasn't the one she had given him for his birthday, but a new one, with something totally different written across the front of it. Romance analysis for the future? Ochako read aloud. Izuku seemed to realize he had just made a huge mistake. His face went red and puffs of smoke blew out from his nose as his face went scarlet. I forget you saw this. He screamed as he tried to hide the book, only for Himiko to scream for someone to grab it before it disappeared into the void. Tsuyu's tongue shot out and yanked it from Izuku's hands, depositing it into Himiko's lap. What do we have here? Himiko's voice, practically dripped with joy at the present, literally dropped into her lap. Making plans, huh? Well, time to just jump into the fire and die, Izuku thought in doomed acceptance. Himiko snickered as she opened the book and flipped through some pages. Oof, come on Toga. That's mean, Hitoshi said with less than real sympathy. Himiko however ignored him and kept flipping. Though after a few pages, her snickering trailed off, replaced with shock as now she was flipping through several pages, only stopping after she had gone through around a full quarter of the notebook. She then made a show of showing the group just how many pages there already were in the book. A few jaws dropped. Himiko herself looked absolutely shocked. Izuku, what the hell? Everyone was now very interested in just how much Izuku had written in his romance book. Ochako in particular was left reeling, embarrassed, but also touched. This kind of obsession was usually just reserved for Izuku's love of heroes and quirks. Now it seemed she was up on that list too. Oh, did that make her heart flutter? Himiko was back to flipping through the book, showing Tsuyu some pages as she did. There were more than a few sketches that showed Ochako in a very flattering light. Man, look at all this. How long have you been working on this, huh? Seeing that everyone was waiting for a response, and not really seeing a way out, Izuku squeaked out, the night before finals. Ochako frowned. The night before finals? But that was the night that Deku and I. What? Dude. You wrote that in how little time? And I thought I was obsessive. Himiko went back through the pages. Izuku, there's profiles here. Date plans that aren't including the Expo. Gift ideas, notes on gifts and lists of every kind of anniversary from week, month, 2 months 3. A list of restaurants and other shopping centers Ochako would like to visit. Techniques for shoulder rubs, references to gift guides. As Himiko kept going, something caught Tsuyu's eye. Pads? Izuku went neon in embarrassed panic while Himiko stopped on the page Tsuyu had picked and was looking it over. Her shocked expression went devilish as she looked it over along with Tsuyu. I wonder what Uraraka's finger pads are like. Would she let me touch them? Do they feel like a cat's? Are they sensitive? How would they feel if we were holding hands? Maybe I should look up hand messaging. She might let me rub them. If I called them finger beans, would that be alright? Finger beans, huh? Himiko wagged her eyebrows. Ochako, looks like Izuku really wants to hold your hand. In a flash of green, Izuku pulled the notebook back and clutched it to his chest. Mercifully, Himiko hadn't read everything he had written out loud. But she had said enough. Ochako was looking at him questioningly, her cheeks red and a little dazzling gleam in her eyes, like twinkling stars. So at least it didn't look like she was upset or anything. But she was curious. I was wondering what your finger pads would feel like if we held hands. Ochako chirped. Holy. Midoriya fantasizes about holding hands, Hitoshi rubbed his brow. Living up to the G-rated part there, man. It shows he has only pure intentions, Tenya countered. As is befitting someone like Midoriya. Ochako gulped as it started to dawn on her just what Izuku having a notebook called Romance Analysis for the Future could actually mean. Izuku was looking at her romantically, thinking of her romantically. Wanting to do romantic things with her. Recently the very idea would have been crazy, but here was fucking proof that he was committed to this. Committed to her. Committed to wanting to spend time with her. To make her happy. Add to everything that Izuku was apparently throwing himself into this new facet of their future relationship with a fervor that she had only seen with his fanboy tendencies and quirk obsession. All of that now focused on trying to be romantic with her. Oh shit, did it suddenly get really hot? Izuku hid behind the cover of his romance analysis for the future notebook, face beat red after snatching it back from Himiko. Around the fire his friends either coughed in sympathy at the now awkward situation or chuckled at how adorable the whole thing was. Himiko just slyly looked over at Ochako, who was still trying to eat her s'more while every so often glancing at her finger beans. Why, you know, Deku. Ochako ran her thumb over the pad of a finger. Maybe you'll get your answer soon. Izuku fucking squeaked while Hitoshi whistled at Ochako's boldness. Careful there. You're gonna give Midoriya unprotected hand-holding? That's a total gateway drug. Next could be spontaneous hugging. After that, we'll have to open a daycare at UA for you too. While Himiko held onto Ochako so she didn't float away, Izuku was now a neon green bulb. I think they'd have to engage in intercourse for that. You're skipping several steps, Shudo stated simply. Now that the two were completely lost to their own embarrassment, May scratched her head. So, I got a question. These two are totally into each other. But they haven't told each other yet? Explain that. Himiko sighed dramatically. Because they're stupid. And want to tell each other after some romantic date or something. Instead of just accepting the fact and doing it. Suyu looked over at her. I thought you'd like the romantic gestures? Not when I'm on the sideline. And honestly, all the romance stuff should happen after the confession. Fucking kiss me and then let's work out the rest. Suyu made sure to jot that little bit of info down for later. Eri gasped happily while pointing at Himiko. She said the fun word. Fuenko quickly pushed a marshmallow into Eri's mouth before she finished that sentence. After the party and now late into the evening, after everyone had showered and cleaned off the ocean salt and more sugar, Izuku tucked Eri into bed with a smile. After such a busy day, she was out the moment her head hit the pillow. Izuku was also just about ready for bed. It had been a fun if embarrassing day. He hadn't expected one of his dark desires to get freaking broadcasted to everyone. But at least Ochako had seemed open to the idea of letting him hold her hand. Though does that mean I should make the first move and grab her hand on the date, or do I let her? Izuku decided that would be a problem for tomorrow. Walking into the kitchen to grab himself a drink of water before bed, Izuku had to fight back a groan of horror. Inko was sitting at the kitchen table, counting her winnings. Mom, I can't believe you kept the money. Inko just rolled her eyes and then stacked up the coins and bills. It's not my fault all your friends had such low faith in Toga, dear. Izuku pointed accusingly. You didn't either. Oh, I had complete faith she'd try her hardest for Eri. Inko then smirked. But that faith only got her to the end of the night. You're horrible. Horribly rich. So, your thoughts? Gran Torino put down his cup of tea while looking across the table at the other hero he was meeting with. Sir Night-Eye was watching him closely, waiting for a reply. The kid's good, Gran Torino said with a shrug. Good. Gran Torino made a small TSK sound and conceded, very good. Very, very good. He's got a good head on his shoulders and despite his friendly demeanor, can be downright nasty in a fight. Been a long time since I got my ass handed to me like that. Sir Night-Eye nodded. How are your ribs? I'm an old man. Shouldn't be getting punched in the side like that, Gran Torino grunted sourly. If you really thought that, you wouldn't have accepted the role. You're a smart ass. Gran Torino sighed. Of course that friend of his surprised me too. Making me dodge all those lighting arrows while Tagata just phased through them. Nasty combo. That little group of theirs might be getting a new name pretty soon. Tagata has spoken highly of his friend and her recent accomplishments. The pair sat in silence for a few moments before Gran Torino asked, and what about your end of the deal? You watched the kid's exam like you said you would? Sir Night-Eye's expression was as neutral as ever. I did. Gran Torino waited a tick before, and? I'm withholding my judgment. For fuck's sakes, you're not going to sit there and tell me the kid hasn't improved. Gran Torino threw his hands up in frustration. Not at all. The boy has improved. There is no doubt about that. However, Sir Night held up a hand so he could keep talking. As far as I'm concerned, being able to use one for all is the start line of my evaluation of him as the successor to All Might. It is how he moves forward now, that is what I will judge. Gran Torino crossed his arms. And I won't be the only one judging him. From now on, everything changes for Midoriya. Clank. In a place where the limits of technological wonders are held back by only the minds of the genius creating them, one would be shocked to find that such a place could even still exist. Clank. The room was large, it could pass for a small warehouse or a mechanic's garage. The dank smell of rust and sweat permeated everything. Clank. Old yellowing fluorescent bulbs flickered their light inside the room. Benches and chairs, long deprived of their covers that had been replaced with rolls and rolls of cracking duct tape, casting large shadows that would give any monster the perfect place to hide. Clank. Cast about was metal. Large chunks cast into different shapes from a time long forgotten. Plates of iron some inches thick were left on the floor or propped against walls. Metal balls the size of pumpkins with steel handles left where they were dropped, the cracks in the concrete floor a testament to their weight. Chains rusted red but still strong enough to hold a cargo ship's giant anchor were piled like unmovable metal serpents. Clank. Pulleys and steel cables were bolted to the concrete ground, walls and ceiling. On one end of each cable were a multitude of palm-thick cast iron plates, chained together and welded for good measure. The cables screeched and cried out as they were pulled taut, dragging the heavy burden up into the air. Lifted high, one could see the concrete underneath was pulverized into dust and a crater was quickly forming. Clank. After each drop, Ethan Drive sighed as he walked into the personal gym. A dank, unwelcoming torture room hammered together by the very person it was meant to break and destroy. You know, dropping your weights is just rude, right? The metal was pulled up into the air again, by the being attached to the other end of the cables, a towering presence of muscle, drenched with sweat, their muscles ripped and writhed as they pulled the cables, the black tank top doing nothing to hide the raw power in their body. Even the camo fatigues, normally loose for a regular person, were bulging at the seams from their wearers' legs. The black combat boots looked ready to be torn apart because of how hard they were being driven into the concrete that was also cracked and shattered. You've torn through this place in record time. We'll need to find you a new warehouse to set up shop. Clank, clank. The weights slammed into the ground after they were dropped, the welds and chains shattering from the impact. Ethan laughed. And we will need to fix those. Again. But I guess they were getting a little light for you, huh? Walking around, Ethan found a water jug and picked it up, bringing it over to the massive giant. Here. Ethan was a big man. Even among the people in his squad, he always had to look down to talk. But here, with this person, he had to look up. You look like you could use a drink. The giant smiled, grateful, took the water and drank plentifully from the gallon jug. After almost downing the whole thing, they flipped the jug up and poured the rest over their head, sighing as the cold water washed some of the ocean of sweat off their body. Thanks. Was there something you needed? Or did I forget something? Ethan waved them off. Nah, nothing like that. I just heard some news I think you'd be interested in hearing. The blonde giant tilted their head while tossing the empty jug away, looking at the strangely coy man. His smirk had their attention. Oh? Just got word, it looks like All Might's private jet just confirmed a flight plan to Y Island. Looks like he'll be attending the expo, with 2 students from UA. More than likely that Midoriya boy and his guest. Though his agency hasn't made any official statements. Figured you'd be really interested in that, Star? A smile split the giant's face, as her head fell back and she let out a laugh, clapping her hands together with enough force that it sounded like a cannon had been fired. Ha ha ha. Running her hands through her long blonde hair, she worked it until she had pulled it into 8 long tufts. Once that was done, Star and Stripe rubbed her hands together, barely containing the excitement starting to bubble out of her. Well, I guess we'll need to get the boys together and get something planned then. Our audience at the expo just got a special edition. And we're going to make sure our entrance is going to be one to remember. Midoriya Izuku. Looks like I'll get to see what All Might sees in you real soon. When the slot in her cell door opened and a food tray slipped inside, she barely even registered it. It was like the ringing of an old clock. It told you that time had passed, but you more often than not just barely acknowledged it. But after a few minutes just lying on her bed, the woman swung her legs off with a sigh. She knew that it was best if she took the effort and grabbed the tray before the guard came back. The bastard had a nasty habit of taking the food back if prisoners weren't quick enough to take the tray off the slot. Even if they were supposed to be given at least 30 minutes to eat before putting the tray back for removal. And honestly, she was not in the mood to skip lunch today. So rubbing a hand over her shaved head, she got up and grabbed the tray before plopping back down on her bed. Taking the flimsy plastic off, she scoffed at the meal's contents. A small cup of miso soup, some sliced up daikon radish and a scoop of rice. But something was missing. Fuckers swiped my grilled fish. Again. Asshole. She was about to toss the plastic tray lid away, but something caught her eye. Turning the lid over so she could get a better look at the bottom, she had to blink a few times to just make sure she wasn't seeing things. Taped to the bottom was a tiny, smaller than her thumb, Ziploc baggie. Wah! Carefully, she pulled the plastic bag free and examined the bag. There was some kind of note inside, and something else. Round and hard. Thoughts of her missing fish were quickly forgotten as she popped open the bag and pulled out the contents. Unfolding the note, she had to quickly catch what fell out from between the folder-up paper. A jet black pill that looked closer to the size of something you'd feed a horse than a person. Damn thing was about half as long as her pinky, and just around. Palming the pill, she looked at the note. Tsutsumi Kana. Take pill. Dissolve plastic and tape in soup. Wait 5 minutes. Hang yourself. Kana, once the Hero Public Safety Commission's Lady Nagant, reread the note a few times, then flipped it over to see if there was anything else on the back. There wasn't. What the fuck? Kana looked from the note to the pill. This was insane, right? She was in fucking Tartarus and someone was trying to get her out. Bullshit. But, as she looked down at the pill in her hand, it by itself was also supposed to be impossible. Someone had gotten this to her. Either through bribes or some quirk bullshit. They had snuck in a note and some kind of pill. So it really just boiled down to, did Kana trust whoever had sent her the little care package? Enough to follow their instructions and apparently kill herself in her cell? Well, she didn't, but at this point, she really didn't care either way, 'cause at least if she did fucking die doing this, she wasn't going to be a prisoner any longer. Oh, what the hell? Popping the pill, and washing it down with some water, Kana started counting. At the same time, she popped the lid of her cup of hot soup and dropped the tape and plastic in it, blinking as it dissolved almost instantly. The paper, she crushed up and swallowed too. Still counting, she grabbed her sheets and started tearing them into long strips, making a rope that would work. Tying one end to her bed, she put the other end around her neck and tied it. Then she slumped down on the ground. Her bed was low to the ground, so she'd have to lay down to get the rope tight enough to. Oh fuck, wah. Kana had reached 280 counts in her head when she suddenly felt woozy. She had just enough time to pull the sheet rope taut and have it dig into her neck before her body went limp and she was sprawled out on the floor of her cell. When the guard came back to pick up the lunch tray, he grumbled when he saw Kana's slot was empty. Slamming his fist against her door, he yelled at her, "Fucking bitch. Lunch is over. Put the tray back now." He waited, but when no tray was slipped into the slot, he growled and ripped open a view window in the cell door. "Bitch, I'll have the boys beat your ass again if you don't." His rant came to a stop when he got a look inside. Oh, you can't be fucking serious. The guard's emergency call had an EMT crew rush to the cell in minutes. Throwing open the cell door, the crew cut the sheet from Kana's neck and began administering medical assistance as best they could. No breathing. Get a heart monitor on her. No heartbeat either. Skin color of her face is off. Neck isn't broken. It's strangulation. Defibrillator now. Clear. The guard watched as Kana's body jolted from the electric shock, but the heart monitor still rang out a low single note. He swore when he watched the EMTs all stand up and shake their heads. Dead. Fuck, the bitch is gonna have my head for this. Kana's body was taken immediately to Tartarus morgue to be disposed of. The mortuary assistant wasted no time getting the cremation furnace ready to go. Loading Kana into the giant oven, he closed the door and waddled over to the controls. With a few button presses, he made the furnace roar as it reduced everything inside to ash. But with the door closed, he didn't see a black mist open up underneath Kana's body, swallowing it up while spitting out the body of a woman, roughly the same size as the one he took. When the fires roared to life, it was this unknown cadaver that was turned into ash. With a gasp, Kana rocketed upright. Her heart was beating wildly and she had to hold the side of whatever she was lying on to keep herself from falling over while also rubbing her throat and neck. Fuck. God damn it, my neck is sore. I hope it's nothing too debilitating. Treacherous hero, the lovely Lady Nagant. Kana froze. Slowly, she took her hand off her neck and started looking around where she was. She was most definitely not in Tartarus anymore. The room was dark, lit only by monitors, and there was a constant chirp of medical devices. Tartarus had a certain design to all its rooms, oppressive and totalitarian. This place, well, it looked more like it would belong to a mad scientist. And then there was that voice. It belonged to a man that she, once upon a time, had been tasked with hunting down and eliminating. She let her eyes track the sound of the voice and saw something she wasn't really expecting. A giant of a man, dressed smartly in a black suit, but it contrasted starkly with all the medical equipment sticking out of his throat and over his mouth. Then there was his face. Or more accurately, his lack of one. Only scar tissue remained that stretched all the way over his scalp. No nose or eyes remained in the man's head. But, even without eyes, he was looking right at her. There was a rumor, some years back, Kana began slowly, as she got off the small medical bed she had been laid on, that you and All Might had a huge battle. And that you died. Even past the medical mask, Kana saw the great demon villain smile. Close. I learned a valuable lesson that day. Nothing is more dangerous than a wounded hero. My feet touched the shore of the river Styx, but as fate would have it, the ferryman did not come to take my soul to hell. On her feet, Kana looked around as best she could, while keeping an eye on possibly the most dangerous being on the planet. Possibly, but more than likely. Even hooked up to all that medical shit, she had a feeling that he could still wreck her shit. But as Kana got her bearings, the effect of whatever was in the pill she took was now wearing away. She knew she wasn't alone with All for One. No, someone else was there too, far, far back in the shadows. In the bad light, Kana could only just make out the outline of a green hood. So, you went to a lot of trouble for this meeting. I can't imagine what it took to get me that note and pill. Much less what it took to get me out of Tartarus. Tartarus prides itself on the strict discipline of its guards. Each one a shining example of discipline and fortitude. All for One chuckled. But they still use people to clean the sheets, wipe the floors and fix the food. All it takes is finding the right person who'd be able to handle the task. I could bore you with how far down the line that little package had to start from if you want. Kana shook her head. But know that it was the only hard part of your extraction. The rest, well, my dear Kurogiri easily warped you out once your body was put in the furnace. All he'd need was your location. You had me swallow a tracker. She put a hand over her stomach. I'm not going to have to puke it up or something, right? You need not worry yourself over that. It will pass. Gross. Scratching at her head, decided to just get down to business. So, effort aside to get me out, going so far as to fake my death, must mean you want me for something. So, let's talk. Will it be just the two of us, or will the one you got hiding in the shadows be joining us? All for One turned and waved the other person off. Ah. My apologies. Today has been a busy day. A few opportunities only recently came to my attention. So I was providing some potential business partners with an investment. Young lady, you may leave. I'll leave my investment in your hands. Kana watched as the figure vanished into the shadows. You love the whole vague importance thing, don't you? If there was ever an example of a shit-eating grin, the one All for One had on his face was that example. So, what do you want with me? To hire you. I want you to join the League of Villains. That was not exactly what she was expecting to hear. Okay, the hiring part makes sense, but what's this League of Villains? Are you putting a team together? In a manner of speaking. You see, after my battle with All Might, I'm not what I used to be. So, some time ago, I began to groom a successor. Kana felt her eyebrows go up. Ah, I see that surprises you. Everything I heard about you doesn't seem to fit your style. A brush with death and facing your own mortality does things to a man. Even great ones. My successor's name is Shigaraki Tomura. Young, but he has already taken steps to undermine the false society built around us. He led an attack against All Might himself, and then turned Hosa City into a war zone. Now that did catch Kana's interest. Being locked away meant she wasn't exactly up to date with current events. He attacked All Might? That's, honestly, pretty stupid. You don't just try to fight that man head-on. All for One laughed. As I said, he's young, impulsive and inexperienced. Though, in his defense, he brought a small army of villains to the attack. And his plan was sound, just poorly executed. After the assault on Yudata, forgive me, but to make sure you understand, All Might is a teacher at that school, but as I was saying, Shigaraki was injured. So I instructed him to begin rebuilding his forces, but to correct a mistake he had made the first time. Quality over quantity, I bet. Exactly right. While he had begun to assemble a team himself, I as his teacher have decided to ensure he is provided with people that will be able to offer experience and reliability. This sounds like babysitting. You need not worry about that. I have acquired the assistance of an individual that will be tasked with ensuring my successor is protected. You are simply a member of the team. The one that has proven herself reliable and capable in the past. Many of the people Shigaraki has brought to his side are inexperienced. I wish for you to help even things out. Kana rubbed her right elbow, giving everything some thought. So you need reliable people mixed in with whoever this Shigaraki brings in. Will he object to your interference? I don't foresee that being an issue. I have made sure to limit my direct influence on his decisions. So he will have no problem with you. Kana stood motionless. This was a lot to take in, and when the country's literal boogeyman is the one giving you a job offer, you would do damn well to give it some thought. She was in some ways trapped. She couldn't exactly just spit in the face of the person that had broken her out of jail. And while she had been labeled a traitor and villain by the Hero Public Safety Commission, God, she hated that old bitch, it wasn't like she had experience ever working as or with villains. She had done a lot of evil shit, but there was always a goal to it. A plan. So if she was going to do this, she needed to know what the end game was. I have a question. Of course. What exactly is this group's goal? You don't just put together a group, attack the freaking number one hero, and not have an idea of what you want to accomplish. And I'm talking about Shigaraki. You seem like you have goals and plans and all kinds of crap going on, but you're asking me to work for your successor, so? What does he want? That smile on All for One's face was back in full force. The Hero Society's destruction. Which I think is the same thing you want. Isn't it? Kana sucked in a breath, her whole body tensing up. You helped build this society. You know the dark secrets and blood spilled to make this false paradise. And after all the work, all the sacrifice, you were thrown away. So I think it's only natural to want to tear it all down. The world must be truly disgusting to you. Oh, All for One wasn't wrong. There were nights when Kana laid awake, dreaming of tearing it all down. The world around her, even before she pulled the trigger for the last time, she had begun to hate it. So having to be locked away because of it, it only made that hate burn hotter. How? How can Shigaraki do this when you, the symbol of evil, couldn't stop it getting built in the first place? Or tear it down yourself in your prime? Where the symbol of evil failed, the symbol of fear will succeed. Well, fuck if that's not ominous enough to be convincing, Kana thought with a chuckle. Okay. I'm in. But, Kana pointed to her head, and her lack of hair, kept sheared close to her scalp. Unless you got a quirk that can help with this, I'm not exactly going to be much use to you for a little while. That will not be an issue at all. Shigaraki still works to assemble his team. I imagine you will have plenty of time to regrow your hair. Now, All for One held out his hand, beckoning Kana over towards him. When she looked at his hand, small tendrils of black glowing energy danced, writhed, and twisted around his fingers. Let us discuss your payment. I have a deposit for you right here. A quirk I think you will find exceptionally useful. A quirk? Kana leaned forward, looking at the way the energy danced. That's a hell of a deposit. What is it? Something I picked up long ago. It's called Black Whip. A man stood at the bow of a small boat as it pushed through the calm ocean. The small waves were barely enough to make the deck bob up and down, though even if the boat was braving a storm, with waves the size of skyscrapers, the man wouldn't notice. His attention was elsewhere. Out beyond the horizon lay his goal, as well as inside himself. His eyes would drift out, then he would look down at himself. Wolfram, sir? The large man's yellow eyes drifted to a man behind him. A skinny, strange-looking man with pale, almost yellow skin and a face almost like a goat's. His thin, dark eyes showed some trepidation as he approached Wolfram. Not that anyone would blame the man. It was a natural reaction. Even before the change, Wolfram was a man you made sure to tread carefully around. What is it, Nobu? Wolfram said, without looking back. Nobu held out his hand, passing a satellite phone over for him to take. He wants to talk to you, sir. Taking the phone with a curt nod, Wolfram pressed it to his ear. Sir? It's Wolfram. A cold, but at the same time charismatic voice came through the phone. My condolences. That you must shoulder this greater sin saddens me greatly. This mission is too important to risk failure. If this weapon were to fall into the hands of any of the governments, then it would spell doom for the world. You said it yourself, do what needs to be done. We are fortunate that their fear holds them back. But it won't be long before their greed and lust pushes them to use the weapon. Wolfram, secure this weapon. Of course. I will not fail you. For humanity's salvation. For humanity's salvation. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 51. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.